The doors are closing. Ron is in the room. Yeah. And the man to introduce him is the founder of the Ludwig von Mises Institute, still serves as chairman and CEO, Mr. Lou Rockwell.
Well, how do you introduce Ron Paul? I could obviously take the rest of this meeting telling you about his qualifications. I'll just mention a couple of things. That when the Mises Institute was founded, this man who, from the time he was a medical student, was reading Austrian economics and because long ago, even though his professional qualifications are in medicine, is a real Austrian economist, was a big help to the founding of the Institute, financially, helped get us on the road. And one of our members here was just reminding me of our first conference in 1983 in Washington, D.C. on the gold standard, that a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors came to debate Ron. Fed was, I think, a less arrogant institution maybe in those days. Ron beat him, by the way, Charles Partee, you won't be surprised to find out. Ron has been beating the Federal Reserve ever since. The fact that Ben Bernanke is having so much trouble today in Washington is due to Ron Paul and all the work he's done. So building on the work of Mises and Rothbard and Hayek and on all our other great heroes, we have our current hero, who in his presidential campaign took the Austrian school to a big step up, so that today there's no question that all over this country, as Tom Woods mentioned, young people, old people, everybody's interested in the ideas of the Austrian school. And we have a lot to say, a lot of thank yous to say to our next speaker, for this wonderful thing that's happening, for the trouble Bernanke is in, Dr. Ron Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like I often say, I don't get that applause in Washington, D.C. So it's good to be at home. It's good to be in Texas. And it's good to be back in America. So it's very nice to be here and among friends. But I do notice, Lou, I think there are more people here than before. It seems like there's some growth in our movement. And thank you very much for coming. There was a time when we would have meetings and maybe there'd be 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 of us talking about what we ought to do with the future. And now it is a delight to see the growth and the enthusiasm. And to me, it's very encouraging. I get a lot of credit for encouraging other people and getting them involved. But the truth is especially when I go to the universities, I get a lot of encouragement because I find the young people are responding so favorably. But this is, there's definite signs that significant change is occurring. And I do truly believe there is a revolution going on in this country. And I say that in the good sense of the word. A revolution, a true revolution, is philosophic. It's a change of ideas. And it's pervasive. It's not a Republican revolution or a Democratic revolution. And I often think about, how the revolution occurred in the 30s, at least a continuation of one that actually started a little early, but a significant revolutionary change in attitude. And then it was sort of, the climax came when it was announced, it was official, when we had President Nixon say, we're all Keynesians now. So there may be a day that we'll get up and we'll have somebody in Washington say we're all Austrians now. It has been a lot of fun and a lot of enjoyment, especially for me in the last 2 years, and also very hectic at times. But things definitely changed after the presidential campaign, dramatically. There was a big change in my personal life. There was a big change in attitudes and respect for what we all have been saying for so long. But actually, there's a change in walking through airports. And that sometimes is, quite, enjoyable. I meet a lot of people. But it is fascinating. Why I'm so fascinated is by the individuals who come up and are excited about getting a picture or talking about what I've been doing. And I can tell you, the people who come and talk to me and want more information and all, they're very diverse. Believe me, they do not look like the typical Republican. And I think this is great. Those interested come from all walks of life. There is no doubt that they don't come from the business class or the banking class, although we'll have them, but they'll come from the working class and, all areas of the society. But because freedom is so popular and brings people together, which has been my argument, if we follow the Constitution, defend liberty, then all of a sudden we melt away so many of our differences. But it also invites a bit of a problem because individuals who do come, sometimes I am dumbfounded, and all of a sudden new friends, and they seem to be even more than I expected. For instance, it's sometimes hard for me to totally understand why the TSA employees would be excited about talking to me. But it does happen, so I just wrote it off for a while. Yeah, they know I'm a congressman, and they just think that they have to, be real friendly. But I swear, some of them are very, very sincere. And just the other day, this individual was reading all of my stuff and calling in the weekly report on the telephone and listening to it. So he's been very involved. So this idea that we can take people and stereotype them and say, well, they're in this category and they're not open to our ideas. And I marveled at it to think that really, with the ideas of liberty and limited government, we can approach anybody and everybody. And to me, I think that's just fantastic. For a long time, we were a very small minority. We still are a minority, and we have to recognize that. We still have a long way to go. But several years ago, before we were getting any attention at all, I was talking to a member of Congress belonging to the Black Caucus, and there was some moaning and groaning about, taking care of people who were in the minority. And I told him, I looked at this congresswoman, and I said, look, you have no idea what it's like to be in the minority. You ought to try being a libertarian in the U.S. Congress. But that is changing right now, and fortunately, I think all to our benefit. But we certainly have a lot of problems yet to deal with. This past week, we had a perfect example of where we really stand, especially on the foreign policy. Foreign policy might be the hardest nut to crack as far as getting people to come to a better understanding. I thought maybe after the election, up in Massachusetts, that people might say, hey, maybe they do really want some changes here. Maybe we ought to look at things more carefully. And we had a vote this week, some of you might have read about it, had to do with Haiti. And I thought, well, maybe they'll look at this. Maybe they'll read the bill. Maybe they'll pay some attention. And maybe there'll be more than one vote. Maybe there'll be 3 votes or 4. The bill simply said, we express our condolences and our sympathies for the people who have suffered in Haiti. That is what the title said, and that's what nobody looks at any of that stuff until they get to the floor, and that's what the little sentence is on the desk. What are you voting on? Oh, to express our sympathies for the people of Haiti. But if you read the bill, you find out that it was an endless commitment of militarism and occupation and no limitation on funds to stay there as far as anybody's concerned, forever. So the vote was going on, and it was like 430 to 3. And I thought, well, see, tripled our vote. But I was wrong. It didn't work. People started looking at it, and probably people running over and saying, do you know what you're doing? You know, so then it was 430 to 2. Then all of a sudden, you know, you change your vote at the last minute. Then it turned out 432 to 1. And I was sitting with close friends who understand a little bit about this, but they also understand from their viewpoint, this is too risky for them to deal with, you know, standing on principle on this. And they looked over and they said, Ron, it looks like you're all by yourself again. And I said, let's just soon have that, because my message is that there's, you know, it's me against the state. And, so it's a terrible way to get symbolism, but in a way, that's the way we all are when you think about the numbers. But the difference is we're dealing with ideas, and we don't have to deal with 51% of the population. Most people are followers. Congress eventually will follow when we become the dominant philosophy of the country, and everybody is desperately looking for some answers for the crisis and the problems that have been created by the illusion of Keynesian and socialist economics. And they're looking more carefully all the time. The other delight about coming into politics from our viewpoint is that, you know, typically if you're a conventional conservative Republican, you know, you get a lot of interviews on Fox News Network, you know. But if you come at it from a free market viewpoint and an Austrian viewpoint, all of a sudden, you know, occasionally on some of the liberal stations, there'll be good civil libertarians and they'll understand foreign policy. And instead of, since the campaign was over, instead of being excluded from Fox, I was excluded, of course, during the campaign and given a lot of grief. But now I think it's been over 50 times since I've been interviewed on Fox on economic issues since the campaign. But the more liberal stations, some of them wouldn't dare want to talk to me because their agenda is Democratic Party politics, and they're not for liberty, they're just for Democratic Party politics and big government. But even on those stations, you will have a few on there that are very honest people. Now, the one individual that I never had heard of, and that shows my shortcomings, before the campaign I'd heard of him, but never watched the program, and that was Jon Stewart. But that guy is pretty fascinating. I've come to respect him. I see he's most likely comes from the left, but he's an honest person. And when the left really messes up, he loves to go and get them. And those are the kind of people, and therefore it is not unusual to see somebody like a Jon Stewart befriend us, all of us through me, by, I don't know, I've been on a show, I know at least twice, maybe 3 times. So those kind of shows we get onto, they're considered liberal shows. But the delightful message here is that we do approach all spectrums, and that means this can be a true movement, a true revolutionary change, and we should be very optimistic about what we see so far. The question of the Tea Parties come up. I believe it was during the campaign, the presidential campaign, that somebody during the campaign, it wasn't always our astute central organization that occurred. I mean, we ran a campaign because there was an excitement out there and there was a lot of spontaneity. Subsequently, though, since then, there's been a lot of Tea Party movements, a lot of Tea Parties, and now it's pretty hard to identify exactly who they are and what they are and exactly what's going on. But I think it's a good sign, because they're anti-Washington and they're anti-Republican establishment and anti-Democrat establishment, and I believe that's good. But those of us who deal only in academic education and also in trying to change ideas, that's a little bit different than dealing with Tea Party movements. But those who are more involved in politics, I think they're rather significant. But all I got to say about it is that you just can't reject them all or endorse them all, because they are very diverse. And I believe what has happened was there a lot of people who spontaneously came together, not fully aware of exactly what they believed in. They had the energy and the disapproval of what was happening, and they came together. But then all of a sudden, when the conventional politician realized, hey, there's a few people disgruntled out there. Hey, that must be a new movement. I better get into that movement and get in front of the line so I can be a leader of that movement. And that's essentially what has happened. They're jumping in and they claiming. And there's pretty strong evidence that that many of the Tea Party meetings are infiltrated by the neoconservative element and not an anti-war sound money group of people. But nevertheless, our job really is spreading ideas, and those ideas being so pervasive that they will influence not only the parties, but the Tea Party people as well. But it is certainly encouraging that there is this much excitement. You know, the other day I was talking over in Atlanta, and I had just been reading and doing some research on a subject dealing with intelligence gathering. You know, that thing that the CIA does every once in a while. And I made the statement, which I don't back away from, but it came out after me expressing my concern about, you know, the secret government and how much control they have. And I had just read recently that, you know, when the Soviet system collapsed, guess who really got in charge? The KGB. The KGB took over, ran things, and right now, 70% of anybody that has an important position in Russia today were KGB members. And my thoughts were that, you know, we ought to be cautious. I mean, I know we've complained about it, and the CIA is something that I've been criticizing for so many years. Quite frankly, I believe that if you have a truly constitutional republic, you would not even have a CIA. And then the opposition will immediately say, "Oh, you don't care. You don't care about protecting America," and all those arguments. But then again, the other side of that argument is, how much more money do you want? You claim that you have, well, we know you have $75 billion for the 16 agencies, and you don't do all that good a job. And you want more money and more personnel to do things that we don't even know what you're doing, and yet the CIA is funded, not only directly, but indirectly. They run their own businesses. Every once in a while, they get in the drug business. And they're a government unto themselves. Chalmers Johnson said it was a private army for the president. That is, until they turn on the president, and then who knows what happens. But it's done in secrecy, and they're pervasive. They're into elections around the world. They're into assassinations. They're into interrogations and torture, as well as being involved in just about everything around the world, and nobody really knows much about it. And that to me is the big complaint.